And what is up, everybody? Oh, I unplugged my headphones. Give me a sec. See? That's the things you got to edit. Hey.
Mic check one. Mic check one.
Yeah, good Lord. All right, now we can go. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Panthers Nation Network podcast run by the Panthers Nation Instagram account. We're so happy this week to be joined by the creator of the Panthers Nation account, Dominique Walters. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. Living the dream. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing. I gotta say, it's nice to do a podcast episode after a Panthers win, but I don't know about you, Tyler, but it was just one of the weirder wins I've ever seen from this Panthers team.
Yeah, in the pre-show we were just talking here, talking about the game, and we were wondering if that even was football that we just watched, because I don't know what I just watched, and that was that was a win. It was a win at the end of the day, and a lot of people are going to have different opinions on this win, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But I'm kind of flustered after watching that game.
No, I agree with that. And so this week we have something a little different for y'all. Jeff, for anyone who listens to the podcast knows that Jeff is a first off Titan fan, second off Panthers fan. So obviously he's got a huge game tonight, a Titan-Tigers matchup that's going to be really fun to watch. So he wanted to take a break this week, and we're okay with that. And then Shantice himself is also working this week, but that's the benefit of having four hosts and having guys like Dominic. And so this week we're also throwing in something a little bit different. We have we've had fans on every week, but this is a guy who's been with us since the beginning of our first podcast, and he's a close friend of mine. So we're happy to be joined by Clay Sellers. Clay, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Happy to be here. I was, again, with the pre-show kind of echoing your thoughts about it's great to come on after a Panthers win. Haven't had too many of those this year, but it's one of those, mixed feeling wins. So I'm sure we'll get into it, but happy to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. We kind of have with our podcast, we started this one in the middle of the season. So the old one we had 3 wins in a row. The episodes were so much fun. We were so
excited to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we were going to the Super Bowl. Teddy Bridgewater was the MVP. No one was going to beat us. And then we started this one. I think we had a win maybe our second episode, I think, maybe. But other than that, I don't know if that. I think we had one win. I'm fairly certain that we were able to record before. Or record after, so that was always fun to watch. But yeah, we talk about it. I was just disinterested the entire game. There was nothing that excited me. I had no reason. I was just sitting there, and it was the most unexcited I've ever been for a Panthers game. I was just kind of just a fan the whole time, just watching it. And I don't know about any of y'all, but it was tough because I would have rather had the football team and Ron Rivera win this game and clinch a playoff spot than us, move down in the draft order.
Yeah, like we were talking about last week on the podcast, it's that wear and tear of, not just the players deal with in the NFL, but also the fans, especially if you're a Panthers fan, you'll know how that wear and tear throughout the season goes. And, at this point, it's, we're not playing for much. And, we've debated, do we want to win for, a pride victory, or do we want to lose and, get a better pick in the draft? And that was the main thing going into today, and it really just makes the game confusing to watch. Like you said, disinterested, and we came away with the win, but it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't pretty at all.
I say, Dom, at least we weren't as bad as the Jags fans chanting for the Bears in their own game so that they would lose the game. We at least weren't that bad. But what were your thoughts kind of as the game went on?
I didn't really mind the game. I like that we actually got the win. As Panther fans, I would rather us see us win, even though the draft pick might be 1 or 2, whatever, best pick available. I actually liked the turnout of the game. I had a couple keys to the game. I wanted to have Haskins beat us. And he certainly he had to do that, and he could not. So that's why Heineke got to come in, and we had to contain the run game because we've been bleeding a lot, especially up the middle. And I don't know why they got rid of the run game. Second half, I thought it was working very well because it usually does. And then be clean on special teams, and that's we're allergic to special teams. That's usually our weak point, through and through. Yeah. So, we attacked all 3 points. And then the biggest point was control the line of scrimmage. And I feel like we did that, throughout the entire game. And it definitely showed. So
yeah, definitely. I would say special teams wise, we haven't had a special teams touchdown since we played the Giants back in 2017. So, of course, this is the one week, the receiver whose name I can never pronounce gets a freaking touchdown. It was the funniest thing to watch.
Yeah, Zylstra.
So yeah, whatever the heck his name is. There's like 8 consonants. There's no vowels except for the end. That's not a name. That's like a Wi-Fi password. It's too hard to talk about. But there was one member of the special teams he's been the most consistent special teams player we have had all season. And he doesn't get a whole lot of love. And Clay knows who I'm talking about because we went to school with him. Clay, you want to talk about him?
Yeah, I love when Rico gets there on the field. Charlton does such a good job with, such an unwelcome aspect of the game. I mean, no one wants to see their punter run out there. But for Jack and I being former Gamecock fans, it's exciting to see what he can bring to the field. And, again, I feel like we've seen all season that he's been able to consistently put the ball in difficult positions for whoever we're playing. And Washington definitely dealt with that today. I mean, they didn't really have much going on offense. But, Dominique, to your point, I thought that we played really well on defense. And the last time that Jack and I had a conversation about Panthers football, I said, going into the season, I think it would be good to see, us play like the Bears, where you got, really solid defense, Bears of yesteryear, not necessarily of recent, but, a team with really good defense that puts together as much as they can on offense. And the first few weeks, I felt like I was totally wrong. And, Jack mentioned we were sailing, we were 3-2, and we looked pretty good. And I think, you see with wins like against the Lions and with wins like today, you see what this team has the potential to be defensively. And then it's really just finding those pieces on offense to click. I mean, Curtis Samuel looked great today. Obviously, McCaffrey's going to come back. We've had people really step up this season. Mike Davis has had big games. DJ Moore. I could list them all. But I think you'll see that if we get this defense to really click like it did today and then bring in a little more consistency on offense, we'll have a force to be reckoned with in the next few seasons.
Definitely. One thing that Dom mentioned that I want to touch on too is winning the battle of the line of scrimmage. I thought for the majority of the game, our line did a very good job against that front seven, because that's a terrifying front seven. When you look at just names alone, I mean, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, Chase Young, obviously Ryan Kerrigan's still back there, Deron Payne, even the amount of first rounders on that front seven is just aggressive in itself. So Tyler, I mean, talk about, how the line kind of stepped up today.
Yeah. So in the beginning of the game was, looking rough, especially that defensive line. Speaking about the trenches first and foremost, I think our defensive line stepped up, and we can get to that later. But, our offense line, it held its own today, and I think we can credit our offensive system. And we haven't talked about this a lot this year, but we've been able to get the ball out quickly this year and not make Teddy hold it forever, because we know that we don't have a lot of talent up front. We don't, but we're able to hold up and hold in when we need to, and especially when we're in the quick game, we're going to be able to work well there. And that's not to say that our offensive line played bad or just average today. We had we had good rests where all 5 of them came together, and we could really make things happen. But slowly together as a unit, we've had pretty consistent 5 guys in there. A lot of teams throughout the season are rotating, cycling guys in and out of the offensive line, and that's really tough. You need that continuity in there to develop, some chemistry. And I think we've been able to do that over the course of the season for the most part. And I think we kind of saw that come together today.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week. The Cam had maybe 20 different O-lines every single year he played for us. And so at least this year, they might not be the best O-line, but it's like being an offensive lineman is about technique and it's about chemistry. You have to know what your guys around you are doing, and you all have to execute well. So if you at least know what you guys around you are doing, you can execute as well as you can and hope it works out. One of the stats that I saw that I was really surprised about, and Dom, I want to know what your thoughts were on this. We had the fewest 3-and-outs in the NFL. I don't know if that's changed going into this week, but that surprised the heck out of me.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. That's actually something I wrote down. I did not know that either. I was like, I had to double check. I actually went online and I was like, that cannot be. No. So yeah. So I mean, just continuing to have the playmakers that we have. Teddy does get the ball out quick. And that's just, credit to the offensive line. I mean, we do give up sacks, but that is, Teddy holding the ball a lot longer than he should be, but that's, later on in the conversation. But yeah, I mean, overall for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. When you have guys like Charles Davis on, I had to make sure I double check the fact too. I was like, is that right? Is that real?
Yeah, that definitely did not make any sense at all. But then, you come to think about it, and then, those third and short situations, you got Mike Davis, and then Rodney Smith filling the line. You got slant routes coming from Robbie. I think he's 4th in the NFL in slant routes alone. And then yards after the catch, I think he's in the top 5 as well. So, when you have players like that, it's really easy to have that happen and make it quiet because, we are a quiet team. We're a regional team. We barely get any games. I'm surprised we were even flexed today.
Yeah. Somebody's explain that to me because I have no idea why I don't know what storyline I thought. I mean, I looked at the other 4 o'clock games. I'm like, oh my God, these are really good games. You had Seahawks and Rams. You had Cowboys and Eagles. Like, at least with Hurts, that was going to be a shootout. And Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket played really well today. But I just saw our game and I was like, why is our game joined with these games? It just makes no sense. I don't know if it was a scheduling issue or something with COVID. It was just
I definitely loved it. I got off work a little early, so I got to watch most of the game. So that's great. Yeah, no, for sure. No, so I was very excited when I saw that stat as well. That's.
I say it's a little honestly almost kind of upsetting, and it speaks to kind of the system of this offense where you don't have that many 3 and outs. You actually can be productive on the offensive side of the ball. Then you get to the red zone and balloon deflates and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. So that's something that's been a huge issue this year. I mean, for the most part today, they looked fairly, they were fairly efficient on offense. But I want to know, Clay, we talked about it, obviously, the first time you and I talked on our first podcast about Teddy. And we had, differing opinions on Teddy at that point. I want to know what your outlook on Teddy has been throughout the season and on his future.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that he's a 2-year plus 1 option, right?
I believe it was a 2-year plus
correct.
1. I know it was 3
Right.
times.
Okay, yeah. So he's got next year, and then we'll reevaluate after that.
Right.
I think Teddy definitely brings something that we were missing with Cam, just in terms of the consistency of his throws for the most part. And I think that's what he brought on paper. Has that played out as much this season? I don't think it'd be fair to say yes. I can see the, thought process of bringing in a guy like Teddy. We had that 1 week with PJ Walker and, I know that I listened in on the discussion on whether we should start PJ or not. And I disagree. I don't think that PJ would be the guy going forward, but I'm not quite sure Teddy is either. I think that he's really good for what we're trying to do now. And as we mentioned, this team has, a lot of potential going forward, and we're missing a few pieces. And I think quarterback is going to be one of those going forward. But again, for what the Panthers are right now, I think Teddy's a good fit. Throw the price tag out the window. We've got, 1 more year, maybe 2 if we choose to go with him. And let's see what we can accomplish. Build guys up, build the receiving core up, let the defensive guys get good reps, but not put them under pressure to, constantly win games and set them up for failure. And let's just see what we get. So, yeah, I mean, Teddy is a guy that you want to see him do successful. You love the story. But I think that when his time comes to an end at Carolina, it will be that he was kind of more of a squad role guy than really a difference maker.
Yeah, a little bridge quarterback, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He speaks to his own name. He's a bridge quarterback right there, and you would think from him. And that's what, it's hard to root against him, and it's hard to, actively, want him to not do or to argue with him, but because it's just of his story. And I think, honestly, the refs give us a little bit more sympathy as a team because we have a Bridgewater now. Like that fumble, that fumble, I was like, that was an incomplete pass. I did not think we were going to get that fumble right off the bat. And we were even texting about that, Clay, and I was like, I don't know why the heck they gave us that call. Because maybe because they like Teddy. It's like, give him the call. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, I definitely think that we got some friendly calls in the game too. But, if I circle back to statistics, I thought the one that really surprised me was that we lead the NFL in fumble recoveries with 14.
Absolutely.
And, when you think about it, you go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We've had some really big plays and we've had some guys step up this year defensively. But that's kind of I think that's a really exciting stat, because, that's not something that happens all the time that your team lands on the fumble. A lot of times you'll knock it loose, or it goes out of bounds, or somebody else jumps back on it. But to have, 14 times that we've come out on the better side of that, sometimes, that's a little bit of luck. But yeah, I hate to keep harping on it, but I'm really excited about this defense going forward. I think that it's got some really, really cool pieces. I think Brian Burns got absolutely snubbed by Chase Young in the Pro Bowl stuff. And I think, Jeremy Chin definitely flies under the radar 100%. And I know that you guys are definitely loving on him, but there's a lot of fun stuff to look forward to, I think, coming in the future.
And that's different than we normally have at Carolina. I mean, that was always the problem. Like that was the problem back, with Cam in that era, especially after the Super Bowl. We're like, okay, we got a window for 85% of this team where they have 3 years basically that we need to get success with them. With Greg and TD and Ryan Khalil, we got to get these guys in the playoffs before they retire. That was what our kind of mindset was from basically 2011 on with a lot of the guys we had around Cam, especially even like in the Super Bowl. The age of the roster that we had in the Super Bowl with some of the guys that we had, especially on defense, where you had Jared Allen, Charles Tillman, Roman Harper, all those guys starting at the same time. Now you're in a different place where the sky's the limit for a lot of these guys. And as long as we can keep them happy and keep them here and be able to pay all of them, we have a good base of a team on both sides of the ball that we can keep cultivating as the years go on. That fumble thing that you mentioned, I think that speaks a little bit to Snow, because Snow is someone we were really hard on at the beginning of the year, and we've gained a lot more respect for. And I think that's a coaching thing, where in practice and drills, I think it means a lot of these fumbles are more forced than they are just kind of happenstance. That's a lot more punches, it's a lot more pulls. And then teaching, the minute you see the ball, you go right down on it. You don't try to scoop it. You just fall on it. And I think that's, a big thing for Snow. Another stat that I wanted to talk about that it surprised me too, and it makes me also a little sad too, that I think if Teddy were to continue to playing the way he was, I don't know how today factored into it, but he said at the beginning of the game, Teddy would have the best QB completion rating in franchise history. For any of our quarterbacks. That's wild to think of. Tyler, I mean, does that make the receivers that Teddy has now? I mean, if Cam had those consistent, and built up as receivers, how much better, could Cam have been with all of them, especially some of the guys he had to throw to?
Yeah, going back to the days with Cam, it was always we needed to give him more help. We always had to give him more help, offensive line, receivers. We all know the receiver list that he went through, and especially the receivers he played with in the Super Bowl. So yeah, I mean, now, I mean, we all follow Cam really closely now, and we just wish for the best for him, even in New England. But as I do think he would be great with those receivers, and it would be the best receiving group he's ever had in his career. Him and Teddy play a lot different. They're polar opposites. So Teddy's gonna be more careful, and completion percentage, that's his game. That's gonna be his game. Cam is gonna be more, you're taking shots downfield, a little bit more risk adverse, but he's gonna have a big payoff. So maybe it won't be the completion percentage if it was Cam in here, because just based off the way they play, Teddy, as we know, is the more careful player, as Cam's going to take some risk because he has the arm talent, because he has the athletic ability to do so. But if I would have just loved to see Cam with this group of receivers, and it's unfortunate that it's a year or two too late.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, Cam was definitely not obviously the most accurate quarterback at all. But the problem was always that the minute he would start to get hot and get accurate, our receivers couldn't catch anything he threw to them. I think the worst one was back in, I think it was either 2017 or 2018. We played the Saints in the wild card, and he was having to throw to Brenton Burson. And there was another one he was having to throw to, like a glorified punt returner. And that's just where it gets kind of upsetting. But talking about, especially with the offense today, I mean, it seemed there was a lot, it seemed – for me, the play calling had stepped up this week. I don't know what y'all thought about that. Dom, I don't know if you thought the same way.
I did, actually. Yeah. I mean, it was a little anemic at first, running the east to west. But I really do think, once Joe Brady decided to know what he wanted to do, pound the ball like Panthers true football, pound the rock. I think we said that we wanted to run the ball at least 30 times a day. So, you got the slants that Teddy threw, we pounded the rock, and then we finally had those deep throws, with Curtis Samuel to finally make those plays, the DJ Moore. So I think that was one of Joe Brady's better games of calling. I'm glad it wasn't, that close to the point where, he would have had to make that extreme call, that make or break call that, we would harp on him here on the show. Yeah. So, I think overall, I think he did a pretty good job. Like I said, one of his top 3 or 4 coaching performances today, for sure.
Now we talk about CMC, we talk about Mike Davis. One guy that I've seen flashes from him, and I don't know where he fits in the offense and the running back room. But Rodney Smith, talk a little bit about him, because he impressed me a little bit today. I don't know about you, Dom, but he impressed me. Yeah,
he impressed me absolutely. Yeah, I really didn't expect him. I looked at him up a little bit more. I knew that about him a little bit, but yeah, the 1-2 punch with him and Mike Davis. It's the next man up mentality, especially with the NFL and everything like that. And CMC has missed 12 straight games now. So, definitely the next man up mentality. So, Cannon as well, got in there and he ran the ball pretty well. But yeah, Rodney Smith, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I have him written down in my notes as well. Yeah. So I think he played really well. Yeah. And he stepped up, when he needed to. Yeah. And he's a very downhill runner, which a lot of people don't give him credit for. He's a smaller back, but he has a lot to prove, chip on his shoulder. So yeah, he's a downhill runner just like Davis, but I really do think that he ran the ball really well today.
So I know Tyler was a fan of him and was happy when we had picked him up. And that's just something, especially when you have, like you talked about McCaffrey. I think for the one thing, everyone needs to pump the brakes on McCaffrey. I understand, they talked about like the 3 injuries. If 3 injuries is really not 3 injuries, if anything, maybe like 2.5. I mean, we do obviously with with his long-standing injury, the shoulder, that was kind of circumstance. We saw what happened at the end of the Chiefs game because he was playing fairly well in that Chiefs game. He was, it looked like we had, McCaffrey back. And then now we've talked about it. The season does not really mean much for the Panthers for the future of the team. I mean, at the time of the Chiefs game, we might have been able to make a run, but I don't think we would have gotten that far unless like we were playing the NFC East, whoever in the world is going to take that playoff spot because Lord knows who it's going to be. They just know they're going to have a losing record when they have it. But I mean, so I'm not super concerned about McCaffrey. I just think I am a little concerned with our medical staff because they just scare me. Whenever someone has an injury, it doesn't seem like that same injury is always lingering for a couple of weeks and it never seems like it's fully healed. But McCaffrey, he's a workhorse. He's an insane, and I think now, because Clay, we talked about it a little bit, he was always he was Cam's go-to target, receiving, running, no matter what. Now a little bit, especially with Teddy, if Teddy's who's running the helm next year, doesn't always have to be McCaffrey. Teddy's got this repertoire with, and he's got this rapport with Robbie and with DJ. So it might not always have to be McCaffrey getting the ball out of the flats. So that definitely is a little bit better, I think. But other than that, I just wanted to know, especially Clay, for you, we had talked about it a little bit. What your thoughts on McCaffrey, just kind of his future?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the coolest things about McCaffrey, I remember someone saying that he's got "be like water" stitched on the inside of his suits. And that's kind of the way he plays, right? He avoids the big contact. Even when you see the, highlight reel flips, I think he had one of the commercials with him, flipping into the end zone.
He plays every Panthers game.
Know.
It's making me sad.
It's a good commercial, though. Yeah.
It is a good commercial.
Yeah, it is a good commercial.
You gotta give him that.
But no, I mean, I think that is a really cool thing about his game that's really underrated. He's a guy that avoids contact, but doesn't play scared. And I think that, with that kind of mentality that he has, we don't need to be worried about him coming back and being, healthy and being able to play. And to your point, we've got options now. I mean, the year that, was his real breakout year, he was the only option on offense. I mean, if we're going to be honest, and that's just not the case right now. Would he still be probably the go-to guy on every down? Yeah, probably. I think so. But you've got guys like Curtis Samuel's been so good on third down this year. And Robbie Anderson, I think, was somebody that I wasn't sure about, but he's been great. And he's been a fun ad for the social media team too, for sure.
He's the man's a national treasure.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, circling back to McCaffrey, I think that, we're going to hit the reset button, obviously, on this year, as you mentioned. And come back 2021, he's going to be somebody with something to prove. I know that people are talking about, Kamara and some of the other guys being, some of the top backs in the league. And I think McCaffrey's probably sitting at home going, you guys forgot what I can do on the football field. So I'm going to be excited for that too, coming into next year.
Yeah, I'm interested to know kind of his mindset. I don't know if he's kind of reserved and, keep me out a little bit, let me get fully healthy so when I come back, I'm going to come back swinging. Or if, he's biting his, tongue, trying not to say anything because he wants to go in. I'm excited either way. And I think that's where I'm still reserved on Brady because we talked about it when McCaffrey first went out. We had said that was the best thing for Brady because when McCaffrey was in, that's all Brady, like he was just, he was fixing, he wasn't, fixing what wasn't broken, but also he wasn't giving us that kind of volatile play calling we were expecting from him. He was just kind of giving, anyone I could go out there and go, all right, give it to McCaffrey. All right, now give it to him on the outside. All right, now throw a wheel route. Like I could do that every game and be fine if you had McCaffrey. But he wasn't, that's not what we expect from him. So I'm interested to see how he translates to next year with his play calling because that's another thing people need to pump the brakes on. I don't think he's going anywhere. He is not ready to be a head coach. He's shown that in leaps and bounds this year that he's just not prepared for. He wasn't prepared for the full, fledged NFL offensive coordinator position yet. Obviously, it was a much different year with, the pandemic and everything. But I still just don't. I don't think people are going to be looking at him. I can't see a team that's in need of a head coach looking at Eric Bieniemy and looking at Joe Brady and rationally choosing Joe Brady. There's not a huge argument there. But
even when they're tossing around Urban Meyer's name.
Yeah, when it comes to coaches and candidates and they throw the names out there, I'm always just like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I mean, imagine it's gotta be hard to judge, kind of coaching talent, especially coming from college NFL. But there's just some of these I'm like, yeah, okay, calm down.
Absolutely.
Just calm down. So one thing, Clay, we especially were talking about, the possibility of shopping McCaffrey. Is that something that you're looking at, or do you think you kind of just keep him on with us and allow him to kind of be the guy who wants to be in Charlotte?
Man, I hate the idea of that.
I know.
I think we've kind of hinted at it some, and we were talking about it in the pre-show. There is a real loyalty, issue might not be the right word, but I'm going to say it. There's a real loyalty issue with, Carolina. And, if you go back to guys like Steve Smith, and then, we go to Cam Newton and Greg Olsen and Thomas Davis and some of those guys that weren't really cutting it anymore at an NFL caliber. And you're seeing that with where they've gone. And, we wish them the best wherever they've gone. And I think you see that loyalty there. But we have an issue with, letting go of those guys. But I don't think that that's the case necessarily with McCaffrey. If we're running into an issue where, he doesn't fit anymore, or he's costing us too much money, then maybe you've got something, right? I think we missed a window with Steve Smith early on when we could have had some real value for Steve Smith. And it was fun to see him those first few years with him and Cam. I remember Cam's first game against Arizona, and seeing what that, had the potential to be. But for sure, I mean, I don't think that McCaffrey is someone that you want to see go. And it's hard to even, mention in the same sentence that he might not work out in our offense, let alone any offense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that there'd obviously be a lot of people that would be interested in him. I guess that's what I'll leave it at.
Yeah, it's like loyalty blinders. There's some guys that we're like, we're so blinded to them wanting to succeed with us that, we don't even think of the idea of kind of shipping them away to maybe succeed somewhere better so that we can succeed in the long run. And you kind of see that with, and it was apparent today, like I know for me, I would have rather had Rivera and the football team win this game today so that Rivera can make the playoffs. And in no other circumstance would you think, I don't think in any other fan base you would hear something like that where you actively would rather your team lose, not just to get a good, playoff or a good draft pick, but so that, the other team can succeed in the same conference and make the playoffs. But that's just kind of what happens, especially, with you have these guys like Rivera. And it's hard. I mean, when you have guys like Greg Olsen and Ron Rivera, it's hard not to stay loyal to them just because of the people that they are. But it's family and loyalty, and it sometimes can be too much, but it also sometimes, it's just needed. And you see it, especially this week. We can't go this episode without mentioning it. We were so sad to hear about the loss of Kevin Green. And our thoughts and prayers over his family. And you saw with the Panthers. I mean, he played 3 years here, but the entire Panthers organization and fan base, poured their heart out on social media and to his family, saying, just kind of paying their respects. And I mean, for a guy who's played here for 3 years, there's obviously he had a huge impact while he was here, but that's just, not something I think you see in a whole lot of fan bases that I think makes our fan base, special. So we definitely want to, pay, send our prayers to that family. And just, that was a sad moment to see when I saw that pop up on my phone as well. So now going into, kind of looking at the metrics of the game and kind of the outcome after winning this game, Tyler, our resident draft connoisseur, where do we kind of sit right now with the loss stands and kind of with the way the week has looked in terms of a draft pick? Because I know we were kind of during the game, we were really hoping we would lose so we could get a good draft pick. So now what does it look like now?
Yeah, going into this week, we weren't really sure where we would fall with a win or loss draft pick wise, and especially knowing that we have week 17 coming up too. So, last podcast, I was personally for, we got to go out and win and, rally as a young team, a young coaching staff, and it's good for the culture, which, point real quick. Clay was talking about how we have those 14 fumble recoveries on defense. I think a lot of that can be charted up to culture and hustle on the defense. You don't accidentally recover 14 fumbles on accident. And that's a benefit of having young guys on defense to fly around and, play hard. And it's good to see that even this late in the year that we're not really playing for much and we still got guys flying around. That's how you know that this coaching staff, we're going to be all right. But, draft pick wise, once I did hear that once Cincinnati got the win and I heard that if we lost, that we would have the third pick. Not going to lie, that was really enticing. So I watched the game keeping that in mind. But now, of course, with the win as it stands now, we have the 10th pick in the draft going into week 17. And we're going to play the Saints next week, which we'll get into, and they'll likely have something to play for. So it's not going to be one of those games where they got their backups in or anything. But a win in that game will set us back a couple more spots. But a loss, we're right back into quarterback range. So the coaching staff, they're there to win. They're not going to be thinking about draft position at all. And we missed it last week, but Marty Herney, our GM, actually got fired a couple hours after we recorded our show last week. So there's no GM over them. Over our coaching staff right now, telling them to lose these games either. So they have no pressure to lose. They're learning, right? Matt Rule, this is their first year in the NFL. They're learning and becoming a coaching staff. And, I think it could pay dividends in the long run. And I think it's going to be something that has to happen too.
No, definitely. And you mentioned it. So the GM spot's open. So we're all going to make our case as to why we should be the GM. We're going to put our, resume out there. Dom, start with you. What if you have a pick, marginally top 10, maybe top 15, what are you at least doing with that first round pick?
I'm actually going to go best player available. I know we need a quarterback. I know we need a quarterback for the future. But we also need an offensive lineman. And we've needed a left tackle for the past 25 years, except for Gross. Yeah. So, other than that, and, so I think we go best available. Hopefully Parsons is available. But yeah, absolutely. I think Zach Wilson, he's really elevated, so he might be going in the top 5, and you might see, somebody fall like the Alabama quarterback, Mac Jones, potential Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah, absolutely. He's not the most mobile guy, but I think that if he stands up in the pocket, and that's kind of like what Joe Brady had, with Joe Burrow. So, Joe Burrow's not the most, mobile quarterback in the world, but he can get the job done when he needs to. SEC guy, big arm. So I think it'd be a good fit. But yeah, I think either best available, offensive lineman, or that's what I got going on.
I'm going to agree with the offensive lineman right off the bat. Clay, what are you thinking?
Yeah, we were talking about sliding back, right? I think if we got Luke with the 8 pick. We got McCaffrey around the same place. So it's not necessarily always about the, what pick it is. It's how you use it. Even this year, I think you would say that Jeremy Chinn has wildly outperformed Derek Brown, who's looked great the last few games. But if you had to pick an MVP of our defense this year, Jeremy Chinn's going to be on the list before you say Derek Brown. So, I agree with Dom that I think you don't want to settle. And by that, I don't think that we want to just go for a quarterback. Jack, you mentioned your dad being a Titans fan first. Does anyone expect that franchise is going to be able to do what they've been doing with Ryan Tannehill? Absolutely not.
No.
And we could have done that with Teddy this year had it played out differently. Yeah. So I think that, quarterback's always exciting. You get the Justin Fields, the Mac Jones, the, Zach Wilson. But if it's not going to be the right fit for us, take what's best available. We could still definitely use a linebacker. Tahir Whitehead made a great play today, but I don't think you see that guy. You don't see him being a long-term,
I forgot his name. I forgot he was on the roster. I forgot his name. I was like, oh wow, Whitehead's on the field making positive plays to help the team.
Right. And you don't see him being a mainstay of the defense. We still have Trey Boston, and I love the guy, but there's some weeks where you don't love the guy.
Yeah.
And we saw that we, filled a position with Jeremy Chinn at safety, but, there's another safety spot open. There's corner open that we could go for. I think our D-line's really solid, so I would avoid there, and our wide receivers are really solid, so I would avoid there. But I think anything outside of that, as long as we're not settling, we're moving in a good direction. I have a lot of trust in this team right now.
I said, Tyler, I'll let you go before I make my piece.
Yeah, so there's a lot that needs to happen before the draft. Of course, we got to look at these guys. We got to see who even comes out for the draft. We don't know. Some guys might stay, especially in this weird year with COVID and stuff. But personally, I'd like to get some eyes on these guys and get more of a firm opinion on some of these guys coming out in the draft. But right now, I'm not sure what I would do. I'm not sure, especially not knowing which pick we have, not knowing what we have available to us. What I will say, though, is we bring a new GM in here. He's going to want to tie his hip to a quarterback that he puts his trust in. And, nothing's guaranteed in the NFL, and you don't know when we're going to be picking, potentially this high ever again. You never know when you're going to have a chance at a quarterback. So a new GM coming in here, if he's ready to tie his job, his career to a quarterback, then he's going to do it because, at the end of the day, Teddy's not the answer, and you don't get too many shots to get a quarterback that could potentially change the franchise. So, but if there's any quarterback that shows any signs of life that our new GM, whoever it's going to be, wants to, bring in as the future starter of the Panthers, maybe not even year one, and I'm sure we'll get to that all off season. But yeah, there's definitely, it's probably most likely that we draft a quarterback as of now.
And see, and I'll make 2 points here, and that's what kind of confused me because when the firing happened, I mean, obviously I was happy. I mean, Hurney did do a lot for the organization, but there was a lot of mistakes that he made in terms of, free agency and contract, management. As far as the draft goes, obviously his resume speaks for himself and some of the picks he made. What I was interested in is when we first talked, the same time last year, when Rivera got fired last year, we're like, all right, owner's cleaning house, the GM's gone, the head coach is gone, they're going to do all that. Like, that's what we thought was going to happen. And we were confused as to why, Hurney was still around. We didn't understand why, he was supposed to be interim, that was supposed to be it, then he was going to be gone. We were really confused as to what had happened. And it wasn't until we talked with former Panthers lineman and, now works for the media team a lot, or he used to work for the media team a lot. Now he's with Chapel Hill. We talked to Kevin Donnelly. And Kevin, he kind of explained, the process, kind of the GM's season. The GM season starts pretty much week 3 or 4 in terms of they're already looking forward to the draft. So you've got a guy, if he's coming around, the beginning of the season, he's already working on his draft. And so if you fire him, towards the end of the season, that's a pivotal moment for the team in terms of, then you have to put someone in who's going to get ready right away for the draft coming up. Of course, we didn't know when the draft was going to be, when, COVID and all that was going to happen. But that's what was interesting to me because it seems like we had those questions around the same time last year. So now you're putting yourself in a weird position because you've got a week and a half left in the season. The draft is going to be, it seems like the draft's already around the corner, which is crazy because it seemed like we just had the draft 2 months ago. But so now you're like, it's just like you talked about. Now a new GM is going to want to come in and make his mark known with the team, especially with this new owner. And I think that's a situation that's going to create problems in itself because I think there was a lot of gel with Rule and with Hurney in this last draft. I think they both understood what they wanted to do. I think that's why you saw a lot of defensive guys get picked up because of Rule's mindset. Now, it's kind of everything's up in the air in terms of those draft picks. So I was surprised Hurney got fired when he did. I thought they were going to let him go at least one more offseason, make those draft picks, and then get him out of there. I wouldn't have liked it, but that might just create a more cohesive structure when you go into the draft. The second point I'll make is that it's something that Clay talked about, and I'll touch on it again. And that's the I'm trying to think of the way to describe it. I guess the Tannehill conundrum. I think what you saw there is that obviously they made a huge splash in drafting Marcus Mariota. At the time, he had one of the most prolific college careers. He was insane coming out of the gate. Everyone wanted a piece of Marcus Mariota. Obviously, it didn't turn out very well. What they were doing under the radar that people didn't really notice was getting significant talented linemen in the draft. They drafted Taylor Lewan. They draft Jack Conklin. They draft guys like Nate Davis that no one has ever heard of, or Ben Jones. They draft them. That turns out to pay off really well. They drafted an offensive lineman this, first round, which Jeff will tell you, though, Isaiah Wilson was about the only one that hasn't paid out for the Titans, and they have seen nothing from Isaiah Wilson because he hasn't even stepped on the field. That's where my main argument is. Clay and I kind of talked about it. I think I really hope they don't bring in a rookie quarterback this year. I really, really don't. I understand in terms of you don't maybe want him to succeed. You're not expecting him to succeed right away per se, but in terms of the team we have now, you're not Teddy, yes, has forced a lot of turnovers and forced a lot of bad plays. You're telling me a rookie with the same offensive line isn't going to make those same exact plays, even because he's had less experience in the NFL? Sure, he might be able to be mobile and kind of make things happen. We've seen guys like Kyler Murray do it, create something out of nothing, especially with the kind of the guys they have. But with the offensive line we have right now, I know it's been consistent, but that doesn't mean it's been good. Those are two very different things. And in my mind, that's why Tannehill has been able to do what he's been able to do, and that's why Teddy hasn't. Because even without Taylor Lewan, I mean, when Taylor Lewan got injured, the Titans started to dip a little bit offensively, but then they just leaned on Derrick Henry and let him do what Derrick Henry does. But you see Tannehill, I mean, he's got insane time in the pocket for the most part. He makes insane throws downfield, and he's able to move around because of the line that's built around him. And that's been the problem. It's what Don said. This has been a team that almost since its conception has just blatantly, for the most 75% of the time, just ignored the offensive line position. I mean, we've gotten some diamonds in the roughs like Jordan Gross and Ryan Khalil. I'll throw in a plug for Kevin Donnelly. But we've had some guys like that, but then we've also had guys that we thought were going to pan out that didn't. So I don't know if there's a sour taste in their mouth from guys like, Jeff Otah or Michael Orr that have left a sour taste in their mouth. We all know how I feel about Mike Remmers. Clay got to witness my hatred to him firsthand a lot of the time when we lived together. But it's upsetting to me because I think that is what's going to end up happening is they're going to go for a quarterback because they're afraid that they're not going to have another chance, this year or the year after. In my mind, you got to build. The draft is where you build, or you build in free agency. We know this team does not really, up until the last years, the team does not make moves in free agencies. It's been the most active we have been in the free agency period in a long time. I mean, other than Robbie, Robbie's not the most prominent one, but I mean, obviously the most prominent free agency, pick we've ever had has probably been Greg Olsen, but we also got Jeremy Shockey that exact same year. So it's just been, the front office has always been kind of iffy. And I think that's you think, the success of a team is built on the players and the coaching staff. I think in the next 2 years, the front office holds just everything in the palm of their hands for the success of this team. The decisions they make with the young roster we have and the direction, because that was the biggest thing this year. I know for us, we were really confused in the offseason what direction they were trying to take. Were they trying to rebuild? Were they trying to win now? Because you cut Cam, you cut Greg, you do these things. Okay, you're trying to rebuild. But then you pick up guys that can create, efficient offenses like Teddy and like Robbie, and you're like, okay, what are we doing? I don't know what we're doing. So in my mind, I'm going with the first. If it were up to me, y'all know I would go offensive lineman, round 2 offensive lineman, round 3 offensive lineman. I'm doing O lineman every single pick. We went all defense last year. Let's go all offense this year. We can get maybe a running back, maybe a quarterback, but all linemen. But something that Clay, I want to talk to you about because I know. Because you also, it's a weird conundrum in terms of this particular player, but we've talked about it. I don't know if you listened to it, but there's a guy that we brought up. Now, obviously, he just signed a big contract, so we'd have to make some moves money-wise. But there's a guy I know who wants to get out of Houston because the way that team's been playing, and that is Deshaun Watson. And if he can make guys like Willie Snead look good, imagine what he can do with our wide receivers. So what would your thought process about be for going after Deshaun Watson, trying to get him out of there and get him on our team?
Yeah, that's interesting. I got to go back real quick because you mentioned Greg Olsen and Jeremy Shockey. And I don't know if he'd be a very practical pick, but I love Kyle Pitts out of Florida. He's a guy that's going to go really early. And my only concern with him would be that does he turn into a Devin Funchess kind of guy? A guy that Devin Funchess played tight end at Michigan, converted to a wide receiver. But for the sake of throwing a name out there, I think we all said a lot of things that we don't want to see out of the draft. But something that would be cool to see out of the draft, I do really like Kyle Pitts.
It's always unnerving when you go ahead. It's always unnerving when you talk about Florida and then you say the first name Kyle. I know you wouldn't have said Kyle Trask, but that's always please don't say it.
Yeah, no, I'll keep away from Kyle Trask. Trask. But no, I kid. But yeah, to Deshaun Watson, I mean, as a South Carolina Gamecock fan my whole life, that was the guy that really turned the tide for Clemson. They had Taj Boyd there for 4 years.
Oh my God, Taj Boyd.
I'll happily throw out there that he never beat South Carolina, and that's not something you can say about Deshaun Watson. The guy's a proven winner. You see what he brings to the table in the running game, in the passing game, and keeping things alive. I think that people love to say that Russell Wilson's underrated to the point where it almost makes him feel overrated, with absolutely zero disrespect to Russell Wilson. But someone like Deshaun Watson doesn't get that kind of love. And I think too, again, he's in a smaller market team like Houston. And it's a team that, clinically underperforms year after year, no matter who they have. I don't know what it would take to get him here. But I'll tell you what, if we do somehow get him here, I'm with you, Jack. We got to go O-line, 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 because that's the one thing that holds him back at Houston, in Houston, is you see every year he's in the top 2 or 3 in quarterbacks and quarterback hits and sacks and all those sorts of things. And you get to see how incredible he can be extending the play with that type of O-line that he has. But I don't think that you're going to see much more than we saw out of Cam if we don't protect him. But yeah, absolutely. Even as a Gamecock, I would be more than happy to see Deshaun come here. He would make game days really, really exciting.
And that's what that's what, especially for a guy like Tepper, he's all about business. He's all about putting butts in the seats. I mean, if McCaffrey, that was your biggest guy, put butts in the seats. And if he's, iffy the next couple of years, who better, especially to bring, I don't know, you don't like it, but all the Clemson fans in Charlotte that are also Panthers fans, they'd be salivating. They'd be paying for every single ticket for every single Panthers game. They'd be coming out of the woodworks to see Deshaun Watson play for the Panthers. And I was one of those guys that was always kind of reserved on Deshaun Watson because of my South Carolina affiliation. But just especially this season, all the crap he's had to go through with that organization and all that they've done to make, it's almost more than Cam that they've done to literally restrict his success. They've almost done more. Trading away his best wide receiver, giving him no run game or any, any running backs or linemen to protect him. And he's still been in a lot of games. There's only been a couple games that they've lost, down in the wire. And so you're right. If we didn't give any linemen, though, it'd just be like Cam 2.0. We'd just be doing the exact same thing. That's what always was so upsetting about, the Cam Newton era, is that we actively just avoided the things that make a quarterback like him successful. And you can't do that many years in a row. When you got guys like you're making Cam throw to, what was it? I can't remember McNutt's first name, but that was one of the wide receivers. Yeah, Marvin McNutt, or all those guys that he had to throw to. That long list of just every name I read just made me more and more upset. I was like, did we really do this to Cam for that many years?
Yeah, I was just going to say another thing on Deshaun Watson too is you see after the Houston flood a few years ago, I think that something that we've always seen out of the Panthers, and circling back to the loyalty thing, we don't bring bad people to this organization. It just doesn't happen. I think that you could, have a conversation and enjoy spending time with anybody on that team. And anytime that we've had an issue, with a Greg Hardy or something like that, they've been out. Yeah, they're out, and they're out fast. And I think that's something that Jerry Richardson, who had his flaws, instilled in the franchise. And I think Deshaun Watson would fit right in there culture-wise. He seems like just a genuinely really good guy that's going to look out for whatever community he's involved in. And bringing him back to the Carolinas would definitely be exciting. As you mentioned, there's a huge college football, definitely Clemson, but a huge college football in general connection to this area of the U.S. For so long, from D.C. to Atlanta, you didn't have a pro sports team. And that's why college football is so big here. The SEC it just means more. And that mantra is that's what those people had. And those, ties are still real and still really strong. And it would be really cool to bring, someone that, again, is just a good man back to Carolina. I think that that's something that we can all admit is a staple of being a Panthers fan, is there's good people in this organization.
Oh, definitely. When you have, almost outright 2 or 3 guys that are in the finalists for Walter Payton Man of the Year, I always thought Greg got snubbed more often, especially the year where they gave it to 2 of them instead, 2 out of the 3, and you're not going to give it to just all of them. That made me more angry than any of the other, almost any of the losses that year. That made me more angry. I was like, really? You're going to give it to 2 of them and just not him? But no, you're right. That's a part of the culture that we have, and it's a part of the culture that was kind of instilled in the team from the get-go. And it would just be awesome to see, him come in. We can dream at least. I don't know what it would take because, I think they did him dirty. They got him to sign that contract right at the beginning before he saw how bad really the organization was going to be. And I can't remember if they traded Hopkins after they signed him or before. I can't remember the timeline at all. But either way, things just went downhill from there. It's not like the team got any better. And that's been, kind of thing with us. And I hate it when they bring it up, the 8-game, they've been in 8 games, but they've lost all 8 game-winning drives. A lot of times, the fans are quick to put it on Teddy, or some fans are quick to put it on the defense. And I'm always, against putting a team, a loss on one player. I don't know about, you, Dom, what your thoughts have been on Teddy, in some of these game-winning drives, these potential game-winning drives. I know for me, I mean, some of these play calls that we made in those drives, you don't make those play calls. Those shouldn't even be slants should not be run on 4th and 8. Digs should not be run on 4th and 15. That shouldn't even be a thing a receiver does when you're trying to get a first down. So I just know what your thought process has been, or your outlook has been on, the closeness of these games.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just feel like, they have been that close, and Teddy, had a good feeling for the first couple 3 games, that he was in it. And then I feel like he lost confidence in himself. And I feel like actually Joe Brady lost confidence in himself, as a play caller to really trust Teddy to make the throw downfield, to really read the defense, and really make the right read. But yeah, I mean,
that's been my biggest issue. And Tyler, you can talk about it too. That's been my biggest concern and issue, is that the whole basis of this team, when we in the offseason was, okay, Rule is bringing in guys that he is familiar with, that he knows are talented but might fly under the radar. And we were okay with that because that can create some production in terms of, you already have this chemistry in an offseason where you basically don't have an offseason, you don't have a real training camp or mini camp, you don't have a preseason to build that chemistry up. So we were okay with that. I don't understand why it is so hard to get the relationship between the coaches and some of these players to mesh. You've coached these guys. You've been familiar with these guys for years, some of them. Robbie or Teddy or some of your guys on defense and offense, you have familiarity with them. Why is it so hard to gel together? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, Tyler? It's so aggravating sometimes.
Yeah. We've seen progress throughout the year, but I almost feel like it was better in the beginning of the season. There was more of a connection. There was more of a, gel, especially with the players that Rule brought in. Because, I mean, Robbie's been great all season, but as we know, he kicked off the season on fire, and he was looking great atop the NFL receiving stats. But it's slowed down a little bit from there. And I almost feel like he was better early on in the season, which, doesn't really add up considering that, you hope more time together with these guys builds that connection. But even still, this whole NFL thing is new to pretty much, the whole coaching staff. And, it's a new thing. And as Rule's trying to, mend these relationships with not just the players, but just people around the organization, and it's a building year, and those connections are so crucial. I mean, we can have all the talent in the world, we can have all the draft picks, but if we're just a bunch of talented guys out there running around, we're not going to get very far. So like you said, we got to, take the time to get these relationships gelled together, the chemistry gelled together, especially with the, pieces, our cornerstones of our franchise. Everybody has to be on the same page, and, looking into next season, that's going to be something that we have to develop a stronger connection with.
No, you hit it on the nail on the head. That was the problem with Cleveland for the last 2-3 years. They had all this talent on offense and defense, but they couldn't get everyone to play together well at the same time up until basically about this year. And even then, did they end up losing? Did they lose that game to the Jets? I didn't catch it.
Oh, wow.
Good Lord.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. That's hilarious. And see, I think you talk about, kind of the losing the confidence in themselves. I think that's the Panthers, and I think it speaks back to the offensive line. Y'all know my it ties the offensive line, but it's true because we did the same thing. I think that's what you saw, especially towards the latter end of his time with Carolina. Cam was doing the same thing. The offensive line puts you in a position to where you think you only have a couple seconds to get the ball out, and sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. And especially when you have a defense like we had the last few years, you basically had to score 30 points with the defense we had last year to try to win a game. This year it hasn't been the same, but for a little while, while the defense was getting to, gelled together, that was kind of the case. That's why we were in a lot of these, 2-minute drill situations. But I think you create this almost schizophrenia in our quarterbacks because they feel like they have to make a play every single time they're on the ball. And if they don't make a play, it's their fault and they've lost the game. That's why you would see Teddy force a lot of these red zone turnovers or a lot of these, throwing into triple coverage or eating sacks instead of getting the ball away because he was trying to get every single second he could to find someone who got to get open. I think that's a real problem that you create. And that's why, I always say, especially if you put a rookie in that scenario. But our defense, and that was the funniest part is that, we knew what we were getting from our offense. We were super excited for our offense. We're like, we're going to be fine. We're going to have the top 5 offense in the league. And that hasn't not panned out per se, but we were expecting nothing from our defense. We're like, yeah, that's going to be atrocious. And now it's been almost like a complete 180 where our defense isn't playing above and beyond what we're expecting it to. And it's not that the offense hasn't, but there's a a huge problem with, red zone efficiency, offensive production, and just, being able to win within 2 minutes. And that's what it's like. I mean, Clay, I know you remember it too. Like, I think it was, I always say it's 2013, but I don't think it was 2013. I think it was 2014 or maybe even 2012, that year where we had 7 or 8 games the same way where we lost by, 7 points or less. And it was just, I talked to them, about it last week. At that point, I was a lot younger, a lot more, not that much more mature than I am now, but, as a fan, I was a lot more headstrong as a fan. I would scream and cuss and hit things those games whenever we lose. If a Lindo Mari would miss a field goal or if something would happen. Now I'm just kind of numb to it all. I'm just like, yeah, we're gonna blow. Like even in this game for the Redskins, I was like, they're gonna get the onside kick. Only 10% of people ever get onside kicks, but they're gonna get the onside kick and they're gonna find a way to win. I don't know if that's how you've been, because you remember how I used to be when we would watch football games together. I can tell you I'm not like that anymore.
Oh yeah. No, we had to sometimes kick people out of the dorm room, but no, I think to Dom's point, really, it's easy to throw the blame on individuals. And, I think it's easy for people to lose confidence. You can see that in any sport, that someone that's lacking confidence just doesn't perform the same way, no matter what tools that they have. And I think it's, good that we can end the season with at least a win here. And if, for some reason we pull one out against the Saints too, then, screw the draft pick, right? We've got time. You mentioned earlier, we've got plenty of time to work on this team. Next year, we're not going to say it's a win now or we're done. You've got time. So let's take the wins when we can get them, build some confidence in the game in the season on a 2-game win streak coming into next year, and give those guys the confidence that, we can get this done. I mean, even with Teddy today, right? I don't think anybody here would say that Teddy was exceptional today, but he was enough to get the job done with how well our defense played. And that's what you need out of a good football team. You don't need it to be the best defense every week or the best offense every week, but you have to score more points than the other team. And we did that today with how good we were on defense. And next week it could be how good we are on offense. So obviously you want to have that consistency and get those pieces, gelled together. But I think in terms of, today being a good football team win, I think they mentioned that in the broadcast. It's a little cliche, but it was. We weren't always firing on all cylinders, but, today was the special teams and the defense that really sealed the deal for us.
Definitely. I think it is a bit more cliche, especially with who we were playing, almost like a kick in the face to them. So you mentioned the Saints game, and we put it off a little bit because, there's not a whole lot to talk about in the Saints game. They will probably be playing for something. That's the way it's looking like. They're not going to be, sitting everybody. So it'll be interesting to see how the game turns out. We go out every week. We say our predictions for the score. I haven't listened. I have been listening. I just haven't checked back to any of the scores that we predicted and see if any of them are anywhere close to what the actual outcome of the game is. I think last week we all picked us to lose, I think. So none of that was right. But it's just what the Panthers. I was like, okay, the Redskins were going on a tear with the Steelers and the Seahawks. I was like, they're gonna run all over us, and it was wild that they didn't. So this week, I'm still gonna say a loss, and I hate to say that against the Saints. I just don't. I have no idea with them. I never know with them. The thing about the Saints games, it's always a fight. I think no matter the caliber of the two teams. Even last year. I think they blew us out of water last year, but of course they were weren't playing anybody, and we were playing anybody. But for the most part, it's always a close matchup. So for this coming week, I'll go I'll probably say 28-14. I'd say that's what I'm going to go around. Tyler, I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm going to go 24-13 loss. I feel like, we're going to be able to slow down that offense that's kind of been limited and almost, one-dimensional over the last few weeks, almost the last few years, actually. And Drew Brees is not himself. He's not looked like he has. And, our defense is playing better. And we saw at the end of this game, we were running around enthused on the field, real excited about that win. So I'm thinking we're going to carry momentum into this game to at least make it close. It's a divisional game, and we're playing like we're a developing team, and we're going to be playing tough. And I know that. So it's going to be a close one.
Dom, what about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think it's going to be a close one as well, especially because it is a divisional game, and we're not in the dome. We're at home. So, that is a big thing. Even though there is no fans, Drew Brees is very, very comfortable, when he's in the dome. And then if you look at his cold record or when it's raining, it's a little different. And he is hurt, and he is throwing slants, and he's not really elevating the ball and going deep. So I think we're going to pull out the win, actually. And then our defense is flying around. I mean, we're running a 3-3-5, which is completely different now, and I'm loving it. Yeah, Phil Snow is really implementing that. So I'm going to go, let's go 27. Let's go 27-20. We'll go 27-20 Panthers.
I see that. Yeah, before I talk to Clay, I'm never drafting NFC South wide receivers for fantasy again. My receiving core was Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, and A.J. Brown. That should win me every game right there. And Michael Thomas and Julio Jones just have done absolutely nothing for me. So I just wanted to mention that. Of course, and I think they know that I'm a Panthers fan. I have hit them, so they're like, yeah, we're not going to play well this year. But Clay, so Dom has a point. We were flying around at the end of this game. It's a divisional game. It's at home, ending the season at home. You never not want to knock, a division rival down a peg in the playoffs. What do you think the guys have to, how do you think they're going to kind of build off of that?
I think we've talked a lot about how the Panthers play in history. And so for us being a 5-11 team to win, a pretty meaningless game in the grand scheme of things would be pretty fitting. So I kind of like Dom's prediction. I think if you're the Saints, they might be, thinking about feeding the hot hand. But Kamara had six touchdowns.
6, yep.
And
Down 6.
You don't see that very often. It's like when Aaron Jones had 4 or 5 for the Packers a few years ago. You don't see their running backs have that kind of production. And if they're trying to feed the hot hand with Kamara, I think that's a guy that we can really work hard to contain. I think we've got a lot of athletes on defense. And maybe if we can get them to start slow and get a quick score like we did this week, I could see something like a 24-20. I think we've had close wins in the past against them. We've had close losses. But I'm going to be optimistic here and say 24-20 win for the Panthers.
We'll just have to wait and see what happens. And so, we're just going to kind of keep pushing as the season goes on. And, we've only got – it's wild. We only have one more week in the regular season. And to something where we were, as a podcast, just waiting to record in the regular season. That's all we were waiting for. Now it's almost over. The season's gone by basically in the blink of an eye. I don't know if it's because of COVID or because, the season always moves a little fast, but it seems like it was a lot quicker this year. But we'll just have to wait and see kind of how the rest of it pans out. And until next time, everybody, keep pounding. Cool. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. I know it was a bit different this year, this week, but I think it worked really, really